Part 1, Chapter 1, The Problem. Modern philosophy has seen the birth of a new notion of God. There is nothing of greater importance, as there could be nothing more ultimate. Even the very attitude of one man to another, or of one nation to another, varies with the conception of God. The outlook on the world changes, the moment the outlook on God changes. And if we had intellectual vigor enough to ascend from effects to causes, we would explain political, economical and social phenomena less by credit sheets, balance of trade and reparations, than by our attitude towards God. The new idea of God has not burst upon the world with the suddenness of a new star. It has had its antecedents dating back over half a century. New scientific notions, increased faith in the philosophy of progress, birth of new values and interpretations of life, love of novelty, dissolution of dogmas, each has contributed its share to bring it into being. Now that it is born, it stands before the world, not so much as a modified notion, as a new creation. Though coming from the past, it differs from all that has appeared in the past. It is, as it were, one of the novelties of evolution. It differs from the old even more than Aphrodite differs from the sea from which she sprang. Its face is set in another direction. It brings man into greater prominence. It exalts him even to the extent of giving him a vote in the cosmic councils of the world. It is, in a word, the transfer of the seat of authority from God to man. But what is this new notion of God? It is God in evolution. God is not, he becomes. In the beginning was not the Word, but in the beginning was movement. From this movement, God is born by successive creations. As the world progresses, he progresses. As the world acquires perfection, he acquires perfection. He is therefore not the Alpha or the Omega of things, for his destiny and perfection lie hidden in the final evolution of the universe. Man is a necessary step in the evolution of God. The divine shows in him as well as in God. One day it will manifest itself completely. Just as man came from the beast, God will come from man. The perfectibility of man implies the manifestation of the divine. Man will be like gods. It is the purpose of this work to examine this new notion of God. But this problem cannot be adequately treated apart from another problem which is intimately bound up with it. This other problem is the value of the intelligence. As men lost faith in the intelligence, they acquired faith in the God of becoming. The modern God was born the day the beast intellectualism was killed. The day the intelligence is reborn, the modern God will die. They cannot exist together, for one is the annihilation of the other. But why the intimate relation between the two? Apart from the purely technical reason which centers round the analogical notion of being, there are two general considerations which englobe all others. The first is drawn from the universe, the second from God. There is in all things a first perfection in virtue of their own specific nature, because the specific being of one thing is not the being of another thing. One thing lacks the perfection of another. By the very fact that a lark is a lark, it must lack the perfection of a sunset. The perfection of every creature, then, is only relatively perfect, because it is only a part of the whole perfection of the universe, which includes the perfection of all particular things, just as one instrument in an orchestra is a part of the whole perfection of the harmony which issues from it. To remedy this imperfection, by which one nature excludes the perfection of another nature, there has been given to some created things another perfection, namely the intellect, in virtue of which it can know all things and possess within itself the perfection of other things, so that the perfection of the whole universe can exist in it. Man's ultimate end, according to Aristotle, consists in this knowledge of the order and cause of the universe. And for the Christian, it consists in the beatific vision of God. For what is there which may not be seen? In seeing him who sees all things. The intellect, then, is the perfection of the universe, because it can sum up all creation within itself. In doing this, it becomes the articulate spokesman of the universe and the great bond between brute matter and infinite spirit. What happens then? When a philosophy rejects the intellect, it breaks the link between the world and God, denies a hymn of divine praise to the Creator, and knocks the world into an unintelligible pluralism. There is yet another reason for the close relation of God and the intellect. Its point of departure is the fact that man is the image of God. The nature of an image requires likeness in species. Thus, the image of the king exists in the sun, or at least in some specific accident, and chiefly in the shape. Thus, we speak of a man's image in copper. Whence, Hilary says pointedly that an image is of the same species. Now, it is manifest that specific likeness follows the ultimate difference. But some things are like God first, and most commonly because they exist. Secondly, because they live. And thirdly, because they know or understand. And these last, as Augustine says, approach so near to God in likeness that among all creatures nothing comes nearer to him. It is clear, therefore, that intellectual creatures alone, properly speaking, are made to God's image. Since man is said to be to the image of God by reason of his intellectual nature, he is the most nearly like God, according to that in which he can best imitate God in his intellectual nature. Now, the intellectual nature imitates God chiefly in this, that God understands and loves himself. Wherefore we see that the image of God is in men, inasmuch as man possesses a natural aptitude for understanding and loving God. And this aptitude consists in the very nature of the mind, which is common to all men. What results from this image of God in man in virtue of his intellect? This conclusion, that intensively and collectively considered, the human intelligence is more perfect than all other visible creation, because in it, as in no other creature, is found the capacity for the highest good, namely God. Being spiritual, and capable of possessing the visible universe within it in a spiritual way, it is already in potency for a knowledge of God, who is the supreme good, a capacity which soon passes into act through reasoning on the visible things of the universe which reveal the invisible God. Without the intelligence, the universe lacks its perfection, as without it, man lacks his. Without it, man ceases to be not only the crown of visible creation, but even the image of God. We are like God inasmuch as we have an intellect. We are like beasts inasmuch as we have flesh. The denial of the intelligence is a denial of an infinitely perfect God, as a denial of an infinitely perfect God is a denial of the intelligence. The two problems are inseparable. But why study this problem in the light of the philosophy of St. Thomas? One reason, and that negative, certainly is the self-confessed bankruptcy of modern thought. No philosophical congress is complete today without a lecture on the confusion amid philosophers. The world is full of thinking, but there is no agreement in thought. There are philosophers, but there is no philosophy. There are distinguished men, but no man. Big heads, but no head. Heads of schools without schools. Leaders without followers. Societies without members. Spencerian thought has been buried in the grave of the unknowable. The history of pragmatism is now being written as an exaggerated reaction against idealism. Italian neo-idealism has dissolved philosophy into history and melted reality into mind. Bergsonian becoming is decaying, and a sort of philosophical biologism remains as its heritage. The hurry, the fever, the restlessness, the excitement which blind us to the divine in things, leave nothing but a philosophy of action for men of action. Men are suffering from the fever of violent emotion, and so they make a philosophy of it. It is not neo-Thomism which is criticizing modern thought. It is modern thinkers. Those who have most contributed to philosophical chaos are now assuming a pessimistic outlook for the philosophical future which they have helped to create. Testimonies of modern thinkers are abundant on this point. Speaking of his contemporaries, George Santayana writes in his own excellent style, "There is much life in some of them, I like their watercolored sketches of self-consciousness, their rebellious egotisms, their fervid reforms of phraseology, their peepholes through which some very small parts of things may be seen very clearly. They have lively wits, but they seem to me like children playing blind man's bluff. They are keenly excited at not knowing where they are. They are really here, in the common natural world, where there is nothing in particular to threaten or allure them, and they have only to remove their philosophical bandages to see where they are. Professor Lovejoy remarks, what the public wants most from its philosophers is an experience of initiation. What it is initiated into is often a matter of secondary importance. Men delight in being ushered past the guarded portals, in finding themselves in dim and awful precincts of thought unknown to the natural man, in experiencing the hushed moment of revelation, and in gazing upon strange symbols, of which none can tell just what they symbolize. But where turn for sanity? Professor A.E. Taylor has given his answer. If philosophy, he says, is ever to execute her supreme task, she will need to take into more serious account not only the work of the exact sciences, but the teachings of the great masters of life. For us, it means that it is high time philosophy ceased to treat the great Christian theologians as credulous persons whose convictions need not be taken seriously. If we are to be philosophers in earnest, we cannot afford to have any path which may lead to the heart of life's mystery, blocked for us by placards bearing the labels reactionary, unmodern, and their likes. That what is most modern must be best is a superstition which it is strange to find in a really educated man. A philosopher, at any rate, should be able to endure the charge of being unmodern with fortitude. Abelard and St. Thomas very likely would have failed as advertising agents, company promoters, or editors of sensational daily papers. But it may well be that both are better fitted than Lord Northcliffe to tell us whether God is or what God is. In short, if we mean to be philosophical, our main concern will be that our beliefs should be true. We shall care very little whether they happen to be popular with the intellectual proletarians of the moment. And if we can get back to truth, we shall not mind having to go back a long way after it. This opinion is becoming more general. There is even now a decided willingness to turn to philosophia perennis and the long tradition of common sense. Over 25 years ago, when Neo-Thomism was born, it met with violent opposition. Rudolf Eucken wrote his Thomas von Aquino und Kant ein Kampf zweier Welten, denouncing the menace of the new philosophy. In 1924, at the Philosophical Congress of Naples, the distinguished Neo-Thomist P. Gemelli occupied a platform with Professor A. Liebert of the Kant-Gesellschaft, the latter to recognize in the philosophy of St. Thomas a complement to critical philosophy, the former to show the necessity of such a complement. In other words, the time is at hand when modern philosophy, not only because of its own confessed bankruptcy, but also because of the inherent merits of the philosophia perennis, must take definite cognizance of the thought of St. Thomas. This brings us to the positive side of the philosophy of the angelic doctor, namely, the fact that he is the first of modern philosophers, as Monsieur Etienne Gilson of the University of Paris has put it. He is the first, not because he has created the principles and invented the attitude in which we live, nor because all the directions of thought by which the 13th century prepared the modern epoch were concentrated in his works, but because he is the first Occidental of whom the thought is neither enslaved to dogma nor to a system. But there is yet another reason why the philosophy of St. Thomas is particularly useful at this moment. What are the two great problems with which modern philosophy is struggling? Are they not the immanence of God in the universe and the subjectivity of thought? All religion hangs on the first and all science on the second. The divine and the human are in the balance with these two problems. But there is no philosophical system in existence which so completely and thoroughly treats and solves these questions as the Thomistic. In recent years, deep students have taken out of St. Thomas the fundamental principles which underlie his whole work. One of them is the real distinction between essence and existence. The other is the doctrine of realism in knowledge. The first has been called the fundamental truth of Christian philosophy, the second the cornerstone of philosophical reconstruction. Both of these fundamental principles are the solutions of the two vexed problems of modern thought. If solution of modern problems is a recommendation for a philosophy which, in the strict sense, is neither ancient nor modern, but ultra-modern, then the philosophy of St. Thomas is preeminently suitable to modern times. It is ultra-modern because it is spiritual and is not subject to decrepitude and death. By its universality, it overflows infinitely, in the past as in the future. The limits of the present moment. It does not oppose itself to modern systems as the past to that which is actually given, but as something perennial to something momentary. Anti-modern, against the errors of the present time. It is ultra-modern for all truths enveloped in the time to come. Intellectual restoration is the condition of economic and political restoration. Intellectual values are needed more than cosmic imaginings, and God is needed more than a new idea of God. If we look to the foundations, the superstructure will take care of itself. Thomistic intellectualism is the remedy against anarchy of ideas, riot of philosophical systems, and breakdown of spiritual forces. The intelligence is life, and the greatest thing there is in life. This Thomistic principle is at once an expression of the ideal of modern philosophy and the very preventative against its decay. This work is divided into two parts. The first is an exposition, without criticism, of the modern grievances against an intellectualist philosophy, along with its attacks on any intellectual knowledge of God and the substitute notion, the God of becoming. The second part is a critical examination of the modern doctrines of the intelligence and God in the light of the philosophy of St. Thomas.